Todd, Brenda, Stephanie, I welcome all of you to SuperChat. Stephanie, before we get too far into our conversation today, I think for the benefit of our listeners, it might be a good idea to have you explain precisely what is curriculum. When we hear that term in education, what does that really mean? What is curriculum?
I think curriculum is a mixture of what we are teaching and what we are teaching it with. So there is a combination of what expectations do we have from students in the different subject areas, and then a combination with what we are using to teach those standards.
Mm-hmm. Does curriculum involve particular milestones of achievement that students must attain?
Yes, there's a continuum of learning from the pre-K all the way up through 12. And so the curriculum and the standards are addressing the different age levels of students, what is expected at each grade level, and it builds and spirals so that we make sure that children are progressing, if you will, from A to Z through a curriculum that is K-12.
Gotcha. Well, for the benefit of our listeners, I thought it would be a good idea to break these apart. Can you give me a summary overview of the curriculum you use in your elementary grade levels, which would be what, K through 5 maybe, or what?
Yes, it is K through 5. We first start with the state standards. The state has been very clear that we must teach certain standards at each grade level. Then we break our subject areas into our math, numeracy, if you will, literacy, which is our English language arts, which includes writing, science, and then social studies. So we look first at the state standards of what we need to master, and then we begin looking for materials, if you will, programs, if you will, that will address those standards for each particular grade level.
The process of aligning the curriculum components with the state standards, does it begin pretty much in the trenches with administration and the teachers getting together and making sure that everything is aligned? I mean, long before school starts, obviously. But is that the beginning of the process?
Yes, it starts with the standards, and then we work with our teachers and community members as well. We are in the middle of a curriculum review now as we speak, and so we do have community members, families that will be involved in that process. But we look at what the standards indicate need to be taught, and then we look at working with teachers what they need to make sure that those standards are taught in their classroom with fidelity.
Well, when a parent hears the words enrichment or interventions, what does that translate into at the elementary grade level?
We'll start with enrichment. Enrichment means that the students have met the mastery for the standard and that we are taking them to the next level, that we are digging deeper with them, that we are allowing them to extend their learning, to apply their learning, to possibly doing projects that extend the learning. On the intervention side, we have levels of mastery. And so when students are not reaching the level of mastery that we are hoping for, we provide additional supports, different ways of reaching those students, perhaps different materials, different ways to assess those students. So we are providing on both ends for students that have met the standard and students that have not met the standard.
As you go about assessing individual students' progress or achievement levels, mastery, if you will, of particular levels in that whole process, which assessment tools are you using with your students in the elementary grades?
So first and foremost, we're using informal assessments in the classroom. So the teachers are responsible for assessing whether or not students are gaining the materials or the instruction needed to pass certain standards. Then we also are using, we call those our level 1 assessments. So those are going each and every day. Students are being assessed informally or formally through a quiz, let's say, in the classroom. We also have assessments that are district-wide. So we have worked with teachers to create assessments for English language arts and also our math. So those are common assessments that are being used, and teachers are discussing that data to drive their instruction forward. We also use universal screeners. So 3 times a year, we use what is called MAP, Measures of Academic Progress. That's what MAP stands for. Those assessments give us benchmarks that we are hoping our students are at, and it gives us a predicted probability of whether or not students will pass our state assessments at the end of the year. Students who are receiving intervention are also being progress monitored, so they are getting formalized progress monitoring using Ames Web.
Mm-hmm. Obviously the measurement of progress, there's data involved, and we're living kind of in an era of education which is pretty much supported by a data-driven model in many corners of public education. Do you feel like the data-driven model works well to help you quantify where a student is at any given point?
Absolutely. I believe that it is critical for us to be able to use measures of academic progress or other assessments to get a dipstick of where students are. I think the most valuable information is coming from the teachers every day working in the classrooms to make sure students are reaching mastery. But there also has to be a universal measure that compares our students to students across the nation and how our students are doing compared to them.
Yes, of course. And the teacher is at the center of it all, of course, in the classroom. Brenda, let me turn to you. Let's focus on the secondary curriculum at Northwest Local Schools. Provide our listeners with a description of curriculum at the secondary level.
I think the definition is very similar to the one Dr. Kessling provided. From my perspective, at the secondary level, curriculum is the what, the why, the how, and the how often of what we teach. As Dr. Kessling said, it is both the state standards, which is where we need to start, and also then the materials and resources that we use to teach, as well as the assessments we use to determine if our students are in fact learning.
Mm-hmm. Are the assessment tools that you use at a secondary level, I assume that they would be different instruments, tools, testing tools that you use for students at a secondary level. Am I correct in that?
Yes, and to some extent, but in general, we follow the same type of assessment pyramid or collection of assessments that Dr. Kessling talked about. So the most informative assessments for teachers are those ones that they do on the spot, they do in the moment. After they've taught, they check for understanding. But we do need a full system. And so at the secondary level, we have also level 3, we call them, or common district assessments. And those often are our quarterly assessments and our midterms and our final exams at the secondary level. But we do use the NWEA MAP assessments that Dr. Kessling mentioned for reading and math all the way through the 8th grade. And then we continue with the reading assessments in 9th and 10th grade. So that's an assessment that gives us that pulse of how our students are progressing and achieving relative to a lot larger audience across the state and across the country.
Yes, one of the really nice aspects of the NWEA is that national norming, quite helpful. And, I hear a lot from educators that really, truly like I'll use the word immediacy of the results from the tests because it's in real time, more or less. Would you agree with that?
Yes, we have been giving the assessment for, I think we're on our 5th year now. And so our students are beginning to understand what the scores mean as well as our teachers. I think the key there is understanding the purpose of that assessment. It is different than any other type of assessment that we use in the sense that it's adaptive. So not every student's getting the same questions. Based on how they answer, the system determines whether or not they get an easier or a harder question. So it's finding that just right point at which they are so that we can provide them with targeted instruction or intervention.
Exactly. Yeah, that's wonderful. Can you explain to our listeners what remediation is, and do you have such an approach to students that need it?
Sure. We do have that in both the middle school and the high school. We continue to look to make it better. One of the fundamental tenets of the Making Middle Grades Work and High Schools That Work frameworks is the concept of extra time and extra help. And really, that's the only way that schools are able to really show improvement and move forward when they have that extra time on top of their regular instruction to be able to move students who maybe didn't get it the first time or aren't all the way to mastery. And so at our middle schools, each one of the three has a built-in extra help bell during the school day. At our high school, Northwest High School, we've got a double block for reading and math for those students who need a second bell of reading or math instruction. And I know that Mr. Fisher at Coleraine High School is working hard to plan for some schedule changes for next year that will build in extra help during the school day. We also offer extra help for students outside of the school day, students who are having trouble with their grades or trouble earning the points they need to on state assessments to graduate, have the opportunity to receive additional support after school.
Mm-hmm. Oftentimes we will hear teachers, administrators talk about end-of-course assessments. With all the other testing going on, it sounds like you have it covered, but do you at a secondary level have what would be the equivalent of an end-of-course assessment for students to measure a student's level of mastery?
Sure, I would say that those at the local level would be our midterm and final exams, which currently count for 10% of the students' grade for the semester in our district at the high school. And so those are in every single course. We offer those even in our physical education courses and our foreign language courses, as well as all of the core subjects. But at the high school level, the end of course exam is that state assessment, and that is in the 7 courses that are targeted right now in our state for that higher level of accountability.
Stephanie, let me turn back to you. Give us an idea as to where things are now. What's going on right now in terms of what we've been talking about?
So at the elementary level, we have some Tier 3 interventions that we are referring to that are specific to students that are not performing or not at mastery for their grade level. We have them working with small groups in a reading mastery program and a corrective reading program. Those are direct instruction programs that are very targeted for different deficits in early literacy. We also have, for our third grade students and the third grade guarantee, we have intervention support for those students, not only during the day, but also after school and over the summer. So students who have not met mastery and will not be promoted to third grade until they do, we are providing those after school and over the summer.
Yeah, because as they say, up until third grade, you're learning to read, and beyond that, you're reading to learn, right?
That is correct.
Yes. Well, Brenda, how about at the secondary level? What can you offer in a way of an explanation of where things are with you?
Sure. We have a lot of really great things happening at our middle schools and our high schools. We are definitely trying to institute a focus on literacy in both settings at the secondary level. Our teachers right now are working hard, both at the middle school and high school, to develop instructional calendars and pacing guides, as well as these common assessments we've talked about. We want to make sure that these assessments are high quality, and so that takes some professional development for teachers and administrators on assessment literacy and understanding how to put together a good test. We don't want to waste our students' time with assessments that don't really tell us anything. We have some good things happening, again, with professional development. Our middle school teachers just went through some great professional development in January with the Ohio Writing Project, really focusing on literacy strategies across content areas. High schools, lots of good things happening. We have been charged to look at how we can redesign our high schools to better meet the needs of students for the future. And I know that you talked with our principals in a previous podcast in more detail about the redesign. But one of the things that I'm really excited about is we've really encouraged our teachers to be creative and start thinking about and proposing new courses that will engage students, that will allow them choice and voice, and that will really get the opportunity to create greater flexibility in their schedule. So what I mean by that is a lot of times when a course is a year long, it makes it difficult for students to have choice. And so, for example, we have for next year 6 brand new literature courses in our program of studies that students can choose from at the junior and senior level. Everything from African American literature to short stories, poetry, and drama, rather than just having a general English 3 or English 4 course. So we're really pretty excited about that. And then in order to continue to move our top students forward, we have instituted and we will be offering an AP course for the first time at the freshman level in social studies at both high schools. And students will have the opportunity this summer to engage in a 1-week camp. We're going to offer 4 different weeks throughout the summer for students who are wanting to be in our honors or AP courses as a freshman. And I can't give it away, but they have a pretty exciting and relevant project that the students will be working on for that week of camp that I think is really going to be a lot of fun, but also help prepare them and set them up for their future. And so we are really excited to be able to offer that to our families for no cost.
Very cool. That is excellent. Todd, let me ask you from an administrative point of view, do you have any comments or insights that you would like to share with our listeners, your stakeholders, regarding what we've been talking about here today?
Well, the reality of what we do revolves around curriculum, student achievement, student mastery, making sure our students are prepared to get in the real world is the most important thing we do. So our curriculum department, whether it's our elementary phase, our middle phase, or our high school phase, is getting our district aligned to where it needs to be in order to give our students the best chance to be successful. So there's great things going on, but like you said at the beginning, a lot of times we don't talk about curriculum and the standards and where things are going. So we just want to make sure that the community in the Northwest Local School District sees that there is a clear direction and that changes are being made to make sure that we have students achieving at a high level.
Yeah. Well, Todd, Stephanie, Brenda, I do think this has been an extremely informative discussion today. Education today with all the state standards and assessments in use, for some, it can be fairly complicated, but I do think you did an excellent job today of laying it out succinctly in a clear, understandable fashion, and my hat goes off to you for that. I appreciate you all sharing this information today, and I want to thank you all for joining me here on SuperChat.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank
we
you.
appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.